Why don't we try to see if Baldy can expound upon that right now? Baldy, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay?
There he is, my guy.
All right.
Yeah. Well, let's back up to the start of just your reaction in general to how much, what exactly has played out here the last week for the Bears since we last talked to you. Obviously, there was Thursday's game. There was the fallout, the way in which Flus was let go on Friday, the press conferences on Monday. Whatever reaction you have to any of it, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I'm not a guy that sits here on a third floor of a film room and advocates anybody to get fired. But, I mean, how Flus handled that last 30 seconds of the game on Thanksgiving was ridiculous. Like, I had people saying, well, the quarterback's got to step up and he's got to know. I'm like, Tom Brady in his 12th game didn't do that. Bill Belichick made that call. Like, you can't stand there on the sideline and manage the game and let this play come in to Caleb. And Caleb's changing the play because he doesn't like it. And you see this clock just ticking. You don't ever use the timeout. And then you go in the post-game press conference and say, yeah, everything was okay. We took the go route to Odunze. I'm like, they had a chance to tie that game up there right there and go into overtime and win that game. It was just a series of events. I mean, it's like you take a thousand whacks with the axe at a tree and, the thousandth, whack, cuts the tree down. And this thing has been going on now for 7 straight weeks where we'd convene here in our little group and we would go through like the failures of the head coach. And at some point, you just got to say enough. We got to let's see what Thomas Brown can do. Let's give him an audition here. We think he's a bright guy. He's interviewed well. Let's see what he can do with this team right now.
Does anyone jump off the page, Baldy, of all the candidates out there that if you were in the position, I know that guy would be the number one dude I'd want to talk to?
Well, I mean, I'm in this building. Bill Belichick's here every day. I mean, I'm just amazed, honestly. Like I get here on Monday morning at 6, and he's usually here. But if he's not, he's here shortly thereafter. He's there every day. And the last coach I saw in the building like this was Steve Spagnuolo when he was out of coaching for a year. And he would sit in my film room on Mondays, and all he did was watch college tape. And he was just looking at the college game because he knew it was all coming to the NFL. Whether it was the up tempo game or the spread game or all that stuff. And like he was getting ready to go coach, and Andy took him on. Now he's the best defensive coordinator in the league. I feel like Belichick is doing nothing but homework. I think he's looking at every single system. I think he's looking at every young quarterback. I think he's looking at who's doing what, the officiating of the games. And I just think he's taking notes every day on how he's going to come back better than he's ever been. That's just me. Like, I don't think he's out doing anything else but that at this point.
The idea that some fans want to suggest that Bill Belichick's only a good coach because he had Tom Brady. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's short-sighted. I know what happened at the very end. The roster wasn't very good with Tom, but there was an awful lot of Bill Belichick involved, whether it was defense game planning. His game plan was different every single week. Preparation was different every single week. They get off to a slow start. He always reset, go back to I formation. Let's knock people off the ball. Let's go back to the basics. I don't know. I think he's the essence of what coaching is all about.
Let's just, if you're the Bears right now, Baldy, you got 5 games to evaluate Thomas Brown. What are you looking for? How are you trying to keep an open mind with this roster at the end of the year, and perhaps maybe you lucked into falling into someone who could be a big-time leader?
Well, I mean, you go to San Francisco this week, they're reeling badly. But the next 5 weeks after that, the next 4 weeks after that, you got 4 playoff teams in a row that you're going up against. Like, how are you competing against teams? Because that's ultimately where the Bears want to get to, is to the playoffs, not just one year, but every year. The way Detroit is doing right now, the way Green Bay has been doing. So measure yourself against these playoff teams: Seattle, Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota. Like, you got 4 playoff teams in a row. Like, maybe San Francisco still is. They don't look like it and they haven't played like one. But you're going to have 4 playoff teams to go up against. And not just that you're playing spoil or anything like that. Go compete against those teams. They're all battling, especially in this division, they're all battling for supremacy between Detroit, Green Bay, and Minnesota. They all feel like they can win the division. So let's see what Thomas Brown does in his own division against teams that they should know very, very well, and how they compete against those teams. And how close are they? And can Thomas Brown and his coaching and how whatever his voice is in that room right now, can that make a difference to this team?
Well, do you know so many people? Do you know Thomas at all? Do you know others who have worked with him closely? Have you gotten any intel on him potentially as a head coach, which we're about to see for the first time on Sunday in San Francisco?
Not really. I mean, I knew him I knew the staff in Los Angeles pretty good when they won a Super Bowl, and I know that Sean McVay had, um, I mean, basically everybody in this whole industry is out of Sean McVay's tree right now, and so I thought that he got a pretty big role there. I mean, he was assistant head coach, running back coach, had a pretty significant role there in Los Angeles, and was thought pretty highly of when he went to Carolina. In that situation, it just fell apart with the rookie quarterback and a head coach being fired. So, he's risen just this year from quarterback to offense coordinator to interim right now. So, but I mean, he's been an assistant head coach, so he's had big duties before. So, but I don't particularly, I haven't sat down in the film room with him or, chew the fat with him on the sideline before games like that.
Do you think that coaches are looking at the Bears job like it's this plum opportunity because of Caleb and Chicago as a passionate city?
I think it's a good job. I mean, Dick Duran took that job. I don't know if it was good before he got, but he did a good job with it. I think it's a good job. I mean, I think there's some things that you've got to correct. I think they got to, address the trenches more than they have right now. But I see playmakers and I see a quarterback that you can work with. And so I see pieces there. I don't know why it wouldn't be a good job. I don't know what the stadium situation is there. I don't know. I mean, Ryan Poles, I guess he's, a guy that can go pick the groceries for you. I mean, if he's in charge of picking these coaches, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, head coaches, you can't give them any kind of a good grade at this point. But, the drafts haven't been terrible. So I just think it's a good job. I mean, I think there's worse jobs out there right now that are going to come available, and Giants and Jets come to mind if they become available. But I think this is as a pretty good spot right here for a guy to step in and and show what he can do.
Baldy, I'm curious about your experience as a player in the locker room. Everybody's firing bullets at the coaching staff and specifically Matt Eberflus. And then there was, wide reports of how ugly it got on Thursday with Jalen Johnson voicing his frustration to Matt Eberflus, and it got pretty ugly in there from what it sounds like. So I'm just curious, have you ever experienced anything like that in your day where players were going at coaches like that? And then, to add on to that question, like how much do the players need to start tightening the bolts now? It seems like, they got what they wanted. Waldron and Eberflus are out of here. But, like, how much accountability do the players now need to hold to themselves to start, holding themselves to a higher standard just beyond the coaching?
Well, I played in Philadelphia, so that was pretty commonplace where players kind of like, they started fights. They got in coaches' faces. I mean, it was kind of a weekly thing here for a couple guys that were head coaches. I mean, if I'm Jalen Johnson, I'm looking at some of the things that I've done as a player. I mean, you're falling down on the ground, you're covering Christian Watson, and Watson goes for 63 yards. I mean, I kind of like think the players, need to look in a mirror, and just look at their own play. I mean, you can question coaching decisions, but ultimately it comes down to the players making the plays. And if I'm Jalen, if I'm any of the other guys in there right now, you might not be happy with the way things have gone, but the one thing you can control is your own play. And Jalen was a Pro Bowl player last year. He doesn't look like he's a Pro Bowl player this year to me. He might be the sum of the parts and all of the things that have gone on over there throughout the season. But at the same time, I mean, players can control how they play, and that's what they should concentrate on.
By the way, the Bears injury report is out. We will share that with you here momentarily. There's a lot of names on it, but we'll finish things up here with Baldy first. And I want to ask you about the 49ers as we turn our attention to that matchup this week. I know you've seen them at least once, I think a couple times this season.
Mm-hmm.
What is, other than the injuries, which have obviously hurt them a lot this year, What have you noticed that has kind of led to them having the tough year that they've had? And do you view this as a possibly a winnable game for the Bears with this new coach bump that seems to actually be a thing when teams get the interim come in for at least a week?
It happened with Darren Rizzi, in New Orleans, and they were close to winning a third straight game last week. They've been awful on special teams. I mean, terrible. I mean, it's just been a disaster, whether it's, block kicks or missed field goals or fumbled. Last week, Debo Samuel fumbled a kickoff. Like they've beaten themselves in a lot of games. They don't look like they have team speed at all. Outside of Nick Bosa, who's missed the last two games, they don't have maybe Leonard Floyd at times, but their defense line has been decimated. If you looked at in the last two games against Seattle, Green Bay, some of these games they've lost. If you look at the defensive line without Nick Bosa in the lineup, the top 6 defensive linemen from a year ago that played in the Super Bowl aren't on the roster or aren't playing. Javon Hargrave, Bosa, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw. You just go through it. So they're way down there. And then, their record without Trent Williams has never been good. So he's out the last 2 weeks. McCaffrey missed much of the season. So the injuries are real, but they just look like they lack team speed all the way around. Receivers don't separate. And then I just think the coach has struggled to adjust a little bit without a Brandon Ayuk and with Ricky Pearsall not doing much since he's been in there. And the injuries that they've had, I think he still wants to run the same offense. And I don't know that the quarterback can still run the same offense when guys aren't getting open and they're asking the quarterback to make all these throws.
I guess last one for me, Baldy. I was watching the breakdowns, which are just unbelievable. I thoroughly enjoy it. And the favorite thing that you saw from Caleb in the Lions game, anything stand out?
I mean, the 3 touchdown passes were dimes. The first one to Keenan, I mean, he's got to beat, his 2 safeties back there. He's got to beat Detroit's other safety to get it to Keenan, and he threaded it perfectly. The second touchdown to Keenan was a whip route, and it takes time. So he did a good job of looking away from it and not coming back too soon to sell it and to give it away. And then the third to DJ, he stacked Brian Branch. And look, you can stack the corner like he did, and you can win the route like he did. The quarterback still has to make a good throw. And so the 3 touchdown throws were dimes on his part. And give him credit. I mean, they were awful in the first half, and they got highly energized and played much better in the second half. And he brought them all the way back to the point where they had a chance. I mean, they're down there at the 25-yard line before the penalties started to add up. I thought they were going to go for the win. Like, don't play for this field goal here, play for the win. And, everything broke down, whether it was Kmet with the offensive pass interference or, whether it was the right tackle, laid off the ball, whatever, it just backfired from there. But I thought he had him down there and a chance to go win that game.
Well, Baldy, when you're in the building with Belichick, if you could do me a favor for next week, ask him if he puts ketchup on his hot dog, see what he thinks about,
I hope not.
That rules you out.
I hope not. That'd be a coach killer because ketchup only goes on hamburgers. Only mustard goes on hot dogs. We know that.
He wants to come to Chicago, right, Baldy? Belichick wants to come here.
Just look at that guy. Before everybody just marries him with Brady. Look at what that guy's defenses did. Look at the Hall of Famers that he helped develop. Look what they did year in, year out on a defense and how difficult it was to score in that team. Just everything from pad level to, fundamentals of getting off a block. Like, listen to that guy's sound bites in Super Bowls and how he's coaching those guys. Like, I don't know. The guy's, I have all the respect in the world for him.
Absolutely. Baldy, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. See you, man.
We all silly like the mayor.